This is the 7 hottest topics in web music tech. Thank you so much for coming up. Web music technology, anything connected to a server. Okay, pretty much we're talking about systems that deliver music or help artists tell their stories to fans. So, we're not talking about Pro Tools and other kind of technologies there. Why 7? Because we can't fit 10 in an hour, right? The hot topics, they're not necessarily in order. May not be your 7 hot topics, but we're going to give you an opportunity to fill in a blank towards the end of the panel. This is a fun, informative panel for intermediate audiences, and we're going to dive right in. And we get a quick, got 3 awesome panelists joining me this year. Really appreciate them being here. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a quick, 30 seconds or so, tell you what they do and where they're from. Harold.
Hi, my name is Harold Gutierrez. I work for 5B Artist Management, and we manage several rock and metal bands, from Slipknot to Megadeth, Danzig, Lamb of God, Motionless in White, and several others. We also produce Knotfest, which is Slipknot's branded festival in 5 different countries, and produce films as well. And my responsibilities there include just overseeing all of the digital advertising, interactive marketing, email marketing, social media, anything kind of that falls under the umbrella of digital touch points for our artists, I'm responsible for.
We have Tiffany Yu.
Hey, I'm from 360. Our artists are Deadmau5, Frank Ocean, Calvin Harris. I pretty much do and funnel everything through the digital space in our company.
Claire Parr, welcome.
Hi. I'm the fairy rock mother. I'm the oldest person on the panel. That doesn't mean I'm not cool, just so you know. I've spent 30 years in the music business. I was a vice president of promotion for Geffen and Curve, and I worked with RCA and Warner Brothers and Republic Records. And about 8 years ago, I wanted a legitimate write-off for my wine purchases. So I started a private music festival in Napa called Live in the Vineyard. And over the last 8 years, I have developed a lot of corporate partnerships with Southwest Airlines and Starwood Hotels and Anheuser-Busch, and really work on breaking music, not only in the traditional radio world, but also through partnerships with big branding and all the corridors that exist to partner in their universes.
Thank you. We're going to jump right in, and we're going to start off with something that's really exciting to me this year, virtual reality, VR. It's really hit it this year, and but myself, I'm part of the South by Southwest Accelerator pitch competition, so I help a lot of technology companies get into the competition. This year, a VR company won the most innovative company in the accelerator, and that was Advantage TV. Just a quick quote from the CEO there. The next 18 months will be exciting for the music industry, with fans ready for great immersive VR experiences and artists eager to position their content as premium offerings. Alex Chung, co-founder of Vantage TV. How many people have seen VR so far? Have you done the cardboard? You done put the thing on your head? You digging it? Has everybody seen the YouTube video where it stitches stuff together? One person, you gotta check that out. Florence and the Machine, Paul McCartney, seen those ones? Mm-hmm. No? Gotta check it out. We're gonna hear from our panelists how they're applying VR with their technologies, their artists, moving through 2016, and then we'll also have some suggestions on how independent artists can just dive right in, like tomorrow. Who wants to start?
You should start with Megadeth.
Harold.
Awesome. So in terms of just a real-world example of how you can use VR to, supplement your artist business, what we did for Megadeth specifically was during their album release in January, we bundled their deluxe album with a physical branded cardboard, what is it, the VR viewer, and bundled it with the album. So we recorded 5 songs in 360 And fans that bought the deluxe album were able to actually watch some of the new songs in VR format. So it really just served as an enhancement of the actual album. So I think that as VR penetrates the market and it becomes significantly more popular than it currently is, I definitely see a lot more opportunities popping up where artists can kind of bundle, create it's a new way to bundle a physical product with your content as opposed to just having a CD. So I think it's a great way to start looking at how you can, that particular way is a good way to look at VR in terms of creating merchandising opportunities specifically. So.
Very nice. Tiffany.
We're looking at VR in similar ways. We're looking at it as like a digital commodity. And then I think as merch stores are becoming, the deals are, especially the ones that we're grandfathered into, they're really difficult to get out of. So we have to be really innovative. So if it's something from VR content for elements of discovery or even like emojis, something to sell is really important. In regards to VR, for the artists in-house, we're doing a lot of immersive audience experiences. So if it's, as someone who's saving up for the next concert to someone who's spending 10 grand on the full experience, we want a little bit of that to be evened out. And then I think with Megadeth and some of our other smaller artists that we've been working with when it comes to VR, we're doing like little bits and add-ons to bundle packages. I think it's really important to, we were just talking about this earlier with Megadeth. It's a band that not everyone that maybe I manage would listen to Megadeth, but that experience opens up discovery just because they want to experience the technology.
Talk to the mic.
Oh. Yeah.
I'm just talking to.
Okay. But yeah, to reiterate that, I think it's a great form of discovering new music, just to experience the technology.
And I think for me, I see it differently because in my world, I'm promoting music, but I'm marrying it to other corridors like travel or wine or food. And so to me, there's two ways to look at VR for artists. There's creating content that's VR driven, that is actual, and then there's adding to somebody else's VR content. So I think you can almost look at it in two separate spaces. And for us, we are producing a festival in Napa called Yountville Live that's going to involve a lot of chefs and artists. And we're actually debuting some technology with HoloLens with Microsoft because Volvo is a presenting partner for us. So Volvo and Microsoft did a HoloLens demo that we're going to be showing and utilizing. And I think we're interested in looking at ways that artists can, if not yet produce VR content, get involved in the way that VR content is being utilized in other markets. So almost looking at it like another film industry or another added content corridor.
Very nice.
Nice stuff.
So myself, I've been in technology since 1999. I've been playing music for a long time. So for the independent artists, like I can definitely identify with that. I've got a brand new act called C'est La Dobro, and I'm really interested in VR. So the first thing I'm going to do as an independent artist is go out and buy a Ryko S360, and that's pretty much one of the most popular cameras people are using for the 360 videos. And if there's one thing I could just suggest for independent artists is get one, dive in, start experimenting with it, post it on Facebook, post it wherever you can. There's a lot of VR startups that are really scrappy. Reach out to them, offer your videos as like, hey, you want to work with a band? So that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm making the rounds around San Francisco and say, hey, what are you guys doing? Like, I got some music, hope they like it, kind of thing. But just a quick suggestion there, the Ryko S360. Has anybody seen that camera? You ever heard about it?
So it's a Theta S, yeah.
It's the Theta. Nice.
Hey, Todd, can we find out
Yes.
can we do our audience question?
Oh, hey,
So we kinda
who's
know
in
where-
our audience? What do we have here today? Musicians, raise your hands.
Do you have artists? Yeah.
You have artists,
Okay.
tech startup people,
Okay.
industry, managers, record labels.
Okay.
Cool, thank you. Thanks for the reminder. Moving forward, We have a few of the digital music services that definitely deserve our attention today. Kind of talk about what they're doing, where they may be going, and how artists are utilizing them. Pandora has been in the news incessantly this year for different reasons. We're going to immediately go to the positive reasons. Ampcast is something that Pandora just released. It looks very promising. There's a few startups that have released the ability to directly message your fans that are following you on that platform. So we're going to ask our panelists how they're kind of utilizing that feature right now, or if they are planning on utilizing it, or what they think of that and the general state of using Pandora to connect with fans.
So in general, for 5B specifically, and our particular artists, rock and metal is very, very strong and used by a lot of our fans. So there is a large amount of data points that are created with Pandora. I think beyond the new feature that you just mentioned, which is awesome, I think what's on the positive side, Pandora provides all those data points and also the ability to kind of create liners to either announce a tour on your Pandora radio channels. And in addition, I mean, all that information that they provide could be useful for launching ad campaigns for new songs you have in very specific markets, launching, kind of gaining an understanding of where your fans are really. And I think that one of the important opportunities to look to in the future with Pandora is seeing how they use their, I guess, acquisition of, was it Ticketfly? And seeing how they incorporate ticketing into their overall music service. So I think that that's an interesting way of how any musician will essentially be able to access that information and launch ticketing campaigns for tours based on that information.
Yeah.
So.
And with their acquisition with Next Big Sound, how many artists are on Pandora that are here? Correct. Did you get a notice this morning that you can link Next Big Sound to your Pandora account? If you didn't, it should be coming soon. That's another, thing moving forward with Pandora that is really good for artists. Continuing down the line.
Pandora is a tough topic, considering a lot of the artists, our most popular artists on the roster are electronic. So far, we've used the audio liners, and the ability to super serve music has been really helpful. As far as the genres, I think with their Human Genome project, some of our electronic music and producers are not misinterpreted, but the genres aren't correct. And also within that field too, it's, since this is non-interactive, there's the ability to search for a certain remix and to find songs similar to it is really difficult. As far as like our other genres for indie, it's been incredibly helpful. It gives them a voice, and we've been utilizing that, and then like the Thumbs Up campaign has been really awesome too, because they kind of come in and they give us an innovative way to introduce artists. Their editorial has been pretty good too, in terms of discovering music. And then aside from that, since they've been offering the analytics portion, we've been using that to kind of guide our way through radio, which is really unfamiliar with our European artists, and then kind of helping us with tour marketing. But it's such a weird thing for me to talk about Pandora, just because I rarely talk about it. But it's still beneficial to have all of our artists on there. So yeah, that's kind of a weird opinion / comment about it.
Cool. Well, the platform is conducive to some genres
Right.
and not to others.
Yeah.
It seems.
I don't know. You want me to talk only about Pandora?
Well,
I mean, I think that
That's the general
streaming in
target.
general, to me, it's one of a tool in a toolkit. I think technology has opened up a huge amount of ability for people to record and release music that they didn't have before, but it's also flooded the market even more with music choices, and it's made it even harder to be heard. So simply releasing something, to me, is a distribution issue. Streaming and putting it out into the market, I think then it really comes down to what are you marketing, what are you promoting, what is your platform, and how are you going to create a space to attract fans. And streaming is certainly a way to do that. It's certainly a way to augment and serve that. But I also think that, you know, it's one of many facets that still exist in the world. And I think most of the bands that I work with will tell you that, you know, they're putting even more sweat equity into their projects than ever before in terms of touring and really personalizing, and I think looking for ways to use streaming in a personal way. So that's content that's exclusive to certain services, that's content that relates, looking at the streaming platform and making sure that your music is that you're focused on a platform that is kind to your music. Earlier we were talking about the fact that Apple probably skews older in its streaming audience than Spotify might. And I think that when you start to learn about those streaming services, you start to find out that they don't all do the same thing. And so I think for you guys, whether you're managers or artists or in the tech field, you really have to look at each of the differences and footprints of what those mean and how they could relate to the music you're putting out.
Nice. And I think that parlays, you know, directly into number 3, which would be Apple. I mean, we have a huge tech giant, you know, going into streaming. Sure, the Apple Music, some of the product people weren't exactly happy with. Still a great new move. Another example of a platform giving artists the opportunity to directly address their audience was the Connect part, you know. And as an independent artist, I found it really easy to claim my profile and to get a video up there that greeted my fans. That was really easy to do. So as far as, you know, Apple in general, with their streaming, or especially the, you know, the tool, the Connect tool, what do you guys think of, you know, Apple moving forward? And are you utilizing Connect at all?
To a certain extent, we are. One of the ways that that we kind of look at Apple Connect is when we're planning out an album campaign or a tour campaign, we definitely look at all the pieces of content that we have and try and find the right places for them, whether it's like finding exclusives on other websites and then saving a piece of content for Apple Connect specifically that they can feature in their like the editorial within iTunes or Apple. It's super helpful. In general, these streaming services, I think the benefit to them is really as a band or as a musician, I think the interesting approach you can take is really the playlisting part has been a super interesting way of engaging fans, just specifically around tours, for example. You'll have multiple artists on any given tour, and there's a tour name, and you can launch these types of playlists on the fly that include all of the artists, and just becomes a marketing tool that you can use while also, I mean, simultaneously plugging the actual tunes that you're going to be playing live. So it's a good utility to use for marketing, I think.
Yeah. Right.
Apple Connect is, it's for us, it's just another platform we have to post to. We do try to find dynamic content for it, whether it be like a snippet of a video or a photo, or again, like some of the playlisting items have been really working well. What moves the needle for us most is the Spotify playlists. Whenever we're launching an artist, it's great to get on other people's playlists or Spotify-owned or label-owned playlisting. We've found it to be even more beneficial than anything else, pretty much. Like billboards, seriously, it's crazy how much influence and how much the needle moves. I think to Claire's point with Apple, it's the fact that, you know, billing information is already on there, and for the artists that we've had that have been around a lot longer, naturally you were connected to the artists that you would previously purchase music for. So with some of our smaller artists, getting them started, it's kind of a bit of a drag, but later on they realize that, you know, if you get on a bigger artist playlist, or if you're, you know, you're more included in the like lean back versions of it. So it's really, it does move the needle, but it's kind of hard right now with no analytics available on the Apple Connect that we really can't quantify if it's heading to music sales, even though like streaming is kind of the hot thing and music sales is kind of dwindled down. In regards to Spotify, we use Spotify so heavily. You know, even now with Austin Kramer coming from SiriusXM, like Electro Now, there's an entire event around Electro Now, the playlist in Miami on Friday. And I think that's such an interesting push forward that these playlists are now going into the live event space. It's really interesting. And, you know, I think one of the private playlists, Elaine Lynn, she's got the highest following. But we've noticed that, like, basically, if you get on any playlist, all your streams go up, everything goes up immediately. And when you include it in there for like a 2-week plan and you kind of dwindle down, you can really see the difference that when you were on playlists, everything goes up. And what we've also found really interesting too is typically all the kids that add your music to playlists, it's not like they take it off after a week. Right. Some of them just leave it on and they add more music to it. So these playlists that are so influential, that have like 23,000 followers, you end up having your track on there for 6 weeks, and that's an element of discovery.
And one more thing to add is I think that's the biggest differentiator between Apple Music and Spotify right now for us, is that you have access to very specific analytics on what effort you're putting into, and you can see what impact you're making and what playlists you're being added to, and how many plays you're receiving from that. Where Apple Music is currently closed, and there's no data there, so I have no idea if it's
streaming
working.
based and one's sales based, really. So, I mean, I think they're totally looking at it from opposite spectrums, and I think that, you know, that's something that everybody in the business is going to have to look at. Is sales are sales are falling apart, quite honestly, in a lot of ways, and so it's going to become, how do musicians, how do artists take, whether it's streaming services or specific content, how do you make that make sense in a world where a younger generation, like with electronic music, where a lot of, you know, there's such a pulse of youth coming into that world, and they are not conditioned to buy music, and they are not going to buy music. They're going to stream music, they're going to create playlists, they're going to take those playlists with them all over, device to device to device. And, you know, I think for all of us as executives in different corridors, and for you guys, whether you're starting or whether you're advanced, it's the same question. It's a sociological shift that's happening in technology, and how we need to look at that, because it's different than anything that's happened in my 30 years in the business. I mean, I've never seen anything like what's been happening in the last couple of years, and I don't see it as negative, I just see it as completely new and completely different, and a lot of the things that we applied to the business or morphed from one phase to the next, I think we're now throwing a lot of those things out completely and looking at it as a very, very different world of how to make music and make money doing that and keep artists thriving and surviving, you know?
Yeah, I want to go back on the point of, like, not every playlist works.
Yeah.
You know, with Spotify, everything's pretty genre specific, and then you got an interesting product like Songza with Google Plus, and, you know, like, what is it, in Asia, 54% of the market is Android, so you've got Google on there, and then even in America, it's the same way. You got like billions of users on Android and Google. It's just something that can't be ignored, I guess. It's kind of like the new form of the music industry. You kind of have to play ball, and it's good to play ball on all of it, really. Pandora, Apple Music, Spotify, and Songza/Google Play. It all moves the needle, and I think as slow as it goes, I mean, I think each one of them are going to be niche to like an age.
Can you guys speak to the content thing we were talking about earlier? Because I think that's something that is unique now to me, is the need for the content is deeper than it's ever been, that I've seen anyway.
On those platforms?
On every platform.
So yeah, moving on to number 4, we're just going to talk in general about platforms, emerging platforms, Snapchat, Instagram. new ticketing platforms and such, and how those are popping up and influencing, what these guys do. So I would
I mean,
riff on that.
yeah. So for us, I mean, that's definitely a big question, but I think that we definitely focus on the major platforms. There's a certain amount of, I guess, research you end up doing and trying to find what's next or what people are using. But really, at this point, I think it comes down to really utilizing between Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and now definitely Snapchat. I think that I was somewhat hesitant of really adopting that platform because I think it's a unique point of view perspective, and for us at 5B, managing bands that are an entity as opposed to individuals, it's a little bit different. But I think this year we're definitely going to make a play in that realm, and I think it's important to understand how you don't have to really think about what you're posting to Snapchat, and I think that's very powerful, where a lot of our bands specifically that have kind of well-known aesthetics, specifically Slipknot, for example, the content on their Instagram or Facebook is very heavily curated and thought about, whereas Snapchat, you can literally be doing things on the fly that are just, ridiculous. And the best example, or what helped me kind of really grasp the whole Snapchat content, or the concept, was following DJ Khaled. So if you haven't done that already, I highly suggest you do it. So you kind of, I guess, get a feel for what that platform is and how you can use it for your artists, for sure.
So the
That's the example.
He's hilarious.
so the DJ you cited, can you spell his name out for the crowd?
Yes, it's DJ space KHALED, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Cool. Tiffany.
So for a developing artist, I feel like whenever any artist comes in, I don't try to push all of it. I think whatever you can keep genuine and consistent is most important. I think you can probably see, just from my own artist, deadmau5, he's not on Facebook, or he is on Facebook, he just never posts. He's on Twitter all the time. It's great to build a fan base with what is really you. Like, people want to get to know you. So, just with Snapchat, we have some artists that hate everything, but somehow took a liking to Snapchat. As long as it's consistent, we're kind of cool with it, because they are building their fan base, and the fan base is truly theirs. You want to build the most loyal fan base. I think it's really interesting now with all these platforms, you have all these artists like kind of fire hosing content out, but at the end of the day, it's kind of on control and where you can kind of gather that back. And it's a really interesting space now, just with, it's hard, they're not like aggregators, but there's places that host content and, like do the contesting kind of all in one, because you want all of your data at the end of the day. You want to be able to like pack it up and walk away with it. You're an artist, it's your data, it's your fans. You should know the most about them. With so many platforms out there, of course, it's always content is key. So we're not struggling, but creating a lot more dynamic content. We were talking about GIFs earlier and like short form snippets and everything. It's definitely the space to make the most of whatever you have right now. As far as like the most important platform, you have Facebook. That's kind of the more, so when I explain to my artists, I explain like Facebook is more informative. You've got a framework you have to work in. With Twitter, it's in real time. Snapchat, I think what's scary is that there's so much room for user error. I'll tell you this, Calvin Harris sent out a track and David Guetta put it on Snapchat, but it was a WeTransfer link that was shortened. So many fans got a hold of that. I think it's scary to think that your fan base is smarter than you, is faster than you, and I think that kind of comes back down to keeping information controlled and doing what's genuine and what you feel comfortable with, because at the end of the day, it could just be user error that can leak a track or whatever it might be. So yeah, I don't know. I think all the platforms are really interesting. You just choose the best one that is best suited for you.
Yeah. So as far as ticketing, you guys got any new platforms that you're championing or trying out?
I mean, I think that space is getting incredibly interesting right now. I think that for us specifically, the whole aspect of pre-sales with artists and taking an allotment of your tickets to either launch like album pre-orders that come bundled with tickets or any type of experience is something that's super interesting. There's companies that Songkick, Applause, and a few others that are kind of independent ticketing companies that they're very interesting. It does get a little difficult to when it comes to dealing with promoters sometimes. Those are conversations that you as an individual will have with them to figure out if you're able to do that. But that's something from my perspective is super interesting, is being able to create these awesome campaigns around ticketing to promote your artists. So.
Very nice. Claire.
Yes.
Hello, check 1, 2.
Well, I'm the anti-ticketer, Robert Scoble.
Welcome.
Because 8 years ago, I started a private event, and you can't buy a ticket to it. So the whole premise of what we started was Willy Wonka's ticket search. And basically, the only way to get access to our festivals in Napa is to either win them or to become a partner with us. And if you're a partner, then you are buying into the concept that we're going to emotionally connect these artists to things that are going to drive their branding. And there's no partners that have lived in our space that haven't given us unique and phenomenal access to their marketing channels. And that's something that you can't even buy for millions of dollars for most of these artists. So we have a very different take on it, and I think we're just now moving to a ticketed model with one of our festivals. But we always tell people we're the anti-festival. We are the antithesis of the big experience. We're the small experience, where how much can you strip an artist down? How close can you get? How much production can we take away from them? And in our world, particularly not necessarily with the youngest consumer, but we're dealing with the middle of that. We're dealing with people who bought music and bought tickets and are craving a connection to artists that it's very hard for them to make digitally. So we look for a way to break those walls down and then to translate the emotion of that experience through large platforms. So, we're just trying to come at it from a different angle, I guess.
Awesome. So I'm going to backtrack real quick. We were starting to discuss playlisting. And, of course, playlisting is, along with streaming, is the new radio, for major artists, independent artists. I'd say, an example, circa 2001. You have a party with your band, you pack up 300 CDs in manila envelopes, you pay a radio promotion company $3,500, and you put all those 300 CDs in manila envelopes in a box, and you mail it to them, they mail them out, and they start hitting the phones for 6 weeks. And you get little updates, and what happens is what happens. You get added, they pass, da-da-da. So the new thing is playlist pitching with specifically, my understanding is specifically on Spotify. And that is just really interesting to me, and I was hoping you guys could shed some light on anything you're hearing about playlist pitching, like who's doing it well, what's the price ranges, should newer artists start diving into it, or?
In terms of playlisting, there is a couple of companies. The one that you mentioned, was it Digson? Yes. Yeah. So there is companies that are popping up to do that. For us, unfortunately, I don't have a great example of actual pitching, because what's happening now is a lot of the record labels are actually doing this pitching with Spotify directly. So I think that on the indie side of things, definitely looking at companies that provide that as a service could be really interesting. I'm not sure what the success rate of those are.
Well, I definitely know they screen. They don't take just, as far as
Dixon?
Yeah, as far as Dixon, they screen it. They listen to it and say, let's see if we can help you, da-da-da-da.
I
And
don't
then-
have a very high opinion of that.
Yeah. Well,
I
then
mean,
let's-
I've done radio promotion for so many years. I mean, there's 10 ways to scam everybody. And I think that whether it's playlisting or, I think you guys are going to have to be very careful about making sure that if you hire somebody, that they have the credentials and the contacts, and that you do your homework on the internet, get some recommendations, and make sure that you're spending your money wisely, because there's not that many people that control the radio promotion corridors in the US still, and I think there's probably even less that are legitimate in the playlisting world. And I would just say, like anything else, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. And if you have somebody telling you that they're going to make massive response with your music and you're brand new, the reality is probably that that's not going to happen. And I think you just need to adopt common sense and look at those situations one by one, and don't be negative, but I definitely think you got to do your homework. I think it's an open field for people that are looking for ways to transition, and they might be experimenting on your dime. So be careful about that.
Yeah, it's a scary market, and even Dixon, I think, is owned by Universal.
Yeah, they are now.
So, but I think as a new artist, you have to think outside the box. What is similar to your sound? Who have you admired? And getting on those playlists is always a first step.
Great suggestion.
Yeah, so I think, like you hear so much about that Sean Parker discovered Lorde because it was on his playlist. I think these are the things that'll really move, and that'll get you your first big step. And with Spotify, it's crazy to think like we have such deep-rooted partnerships as a management company with these DSPs, so we kind of have direct access into their playlist pitching, or
For people who don't, though, I
Yeah.
think that's a good idea,
Yeah.
to find the ones that have similar music and to find those pathways, because that's where you're going to start and then move to the next plateau.
Yeah, because everyone, wants to be, even the artists themselves, they want to be the first to discover someone. So you reaching out to your artists or other artists that are similar or that you admire, or whoever has influenced you, really helps out. That's about it.
Yeah. Thank you. Moving on. Just continuing to talk about some of the platforms that, do fill the news lines and headlines within music or music tech publications. Let's move to SoundCloud. And here, a lot of people depend on SoundCloud to get their music out to their fans. Easy, quick way. And, there's some problems here and there with takedown notices, things disappear, accounts disappear. But, there's still a huge fan base, still alive. How are you guys utilizing SoundCloud these days?
So SoundCloud for 5B has primarily just been a hosting service for web applications that we end up launching. So whenever we have a tour or album campaign for a specific artist, you're able.
So are these custom hacks you're talking about?
Yeah, custom.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's specific. That's really the only way we use SoundCloud now. On occasion, an artist will host an album and deliver it as an exclusive for a specific publication. But yeah, primarily now the beauty of SoundCloud is you can build the interactive websites basically and add the sound functionality with SoundCloud. So that's pretty much the only way we use it now. So.
And then you have a lot of electronic artists, which pretty
yeah.
much it'd be safe to say SoundCloud is dominated by electronic music.
It's very dominated by that. It's very popular even with our A&R. We get nearly everything
Yeah.
on SoundCloud. And even for me, when I was listening to electronic music in college, it was the best. Like, you can find that exact remix, and you can find more than just fans. You find a whole bank of creators. And I think it's really interesting for us too. especially within the electronic music space, it kind of gives the clout to get, the BBC Radio 1 shows, you get that radio rip, you kind of get Annie Mac talking about your track. It's important. It's always part of our release strategies. We get snippets of songs up there. And it's great. I mean, a lot of artists still use it to just test music out. If you don't know, like deadmau5 also puts full project files up there and whatever he feels like doing. But it's an interesting space. I mean, with SoundCloud, all these different deals coming in, every deal seems to be different. I mean, just last week I dealt with 27 takedowns. I mean, everything, there's such a fine line, and with SoundCloud it was that allure of like you could post anything you want. Now, if there's an electronic artist that it's an influence of a different artist, there's such a fine line of that, and I think it's safe to say just to be careful with SoundCloud. I think we'll still use it as a promotional tool and for radio rips and here and there, but I mean, I love that platform. It's a platform that I got started on, really. And it just has this feel. It's kind of like Instagram. It feels very artistic. There's limitations, but not the crappy like promo marketing, corny limitations to it. I don't know. What are your thoughts, especially with radio?
We use it a lot. We have 30 music supervisors that come into our event twice a year. So I always tell, that's where we have a lot of independent artists who are really, really indie artists. And the supervisors use SoundCloud almost exclusively because they can sync up when they're looking at a piece of film. They may take like 20 tracks and line them up and just rough them to picture so that they have an idea of a feel of what a track is going to look like against picture. And I think it's very effective. And for me, the supervisors ask specifically for music on SoundCloud, not just for vocal music, but for the instrumental versions as well.
That's totally
and I think
true.
it's really, really useful. And that's where I see it used
Oh,
even
yeah.
more than anything.
Yeah.
So radio, not as much, because we have media base and other things that are delivering music to the programming guys. But I think it's really useful. And I'm with you. I like digging around on it. You know, you just find amazing stuff, and I get sort of swept away in it, just finding little crevices of cool music or people's playlists, and then seeing what they're interested in.
Yeah, and it's super cool on that note too, because with our electronic producers, a lot of them are classically trained.
Yeah.
They've come from film composition. They've worked for Hans Zimmer, and it's kind of a one-stop shop.
Yep.
You can make things private and send it out. So it's an awesome tool. And then some of the film composers will look at it, look at their following and go, wow, they're multifaceted.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much. That was great. So, I've been doing this panel for like five years now. I like to try something new every once in a while. Today, we thought we'd let you pick the seventh hot topic to hear what they'd have to say about it. Go ahead and yell it out.
Virtual reality.
You're late. We already did that.
You're a plant.
Blockchain. Okay. Anything else? Video stream. On the other hand?
I had streamed.
You had streaming.
Live event discovery.
Discovery.
Streaming transparency. Mechanical Rights Society of the United States.
Wow.
We're trying to keep to like an
Do we have 4
intermediate
hours on that?
audience, but you guys want to pick one?
Yeah, so I'll comment on the video streaming, because that's actually a very important aspect of our particular artists' careers and shows. I think there's definitely two ways of looking at it. From the management perspective is one, how Facebook and like Twitter or the Periscopes of the world are enabling artists to live stream on the fly. I think that's an interesting tool to be able to use. If you have artists, if you're a touring artist, I think it's definitely a useful tool that you can just launch Q&As with fans or I don't know, anything really in relation to connecting with your fan in the newsfeed, and considering that Facebook has been really giving these videos a large amount of impressions, I think for us it's been super interesting, and obviously right now beyond that, live streaming and monetization is kind of a question that we're all asking ourselves, because we've done plenty of live streams of our live shows and festivals, but how do you kind of take it to the next step and create, whether it's like a Roku app or something for an artist that you can then start streaming live, or just any type of produced content that you can really start selling fans is something that we're really looking to for 2016 specifically. So.
Yeah, I'll back them up on that. I think it's extremely important now that it's important and kind of unfortunate. It's not just the music now. We've seen a lot of different data with some of our indie artists, one being Vaults, was on 50 Shades of Grey, and yeah, that soundtrack was great and the music was great, but there was no connection between the artist and the fans. Streaming gives that ability, like especially this Facebook stream, the mentions and everything, it gives you the ability to make a connection with your fans. Right now, the way streaming works just in music, it's so quick, and we were talking about how music genres just everything moves so quickly that you really need to have time to anchor in your fans. I think that really helps when they can relate to you, and when you feel connected to the music and the person or the artist. As far as video streaming, we're really heavy in that right now. And I think it's an interesting space. We were discussing it earlier with web broadcasting. It's not even broadcasting anymore, it's niche casting, because everything is so specific. And with such an immediate society, you need things to be, you want it now. So, another big example, again, is Deadmau5, or even Ultra this weekend is gonna be streaming on Twitch. Twitch has primarily been a gaming platform, and now Ultra, the hugest electronic music festival, is gonna be streaming on there. And with some of our other artists, just Deadmau5 in general, I mean, we have a partnership with Twitch, and it's great. It fits him. Finding things that fit what he does on the daily is what is gonna fit. There's other streaming platforms out there like Chew TV. It gives you the opportunity to, if you're streaming a DJ set or anything, it's the fact that your face is in it, and they can recognize, like, hey, that kid's in the same room that I grew up in, or whatever it might be. Like, in the background, that poster, that's who I listen to, or that's what I like too. It's any little bit that can form that connection. You're on the plus. Are you live streaming your festival?
No, we are not. We record it and broadcast on Sirius. We don't live stream, and the reason we don't is that we have a lot of mechanical rights issues with labels. We'll have 37 or 40 artists at an event, and they're all on different record labels, different publishers, different rules, different regs. And to be honest with you, I own my own company, so it's not one of those things where I've got some conglomerate that's paying to license all this stuff. My partner and I basically have to go and figure out how to do it, and have been figuring out how to do it for years, and it's not easy. And I think that, every situation is case by case. For us, we've gone to create additional content plays rather than going to actually streaming our own event. I also, in some ways, kind of like that we're not streaming, because, again, we're making the experience really valuable. And I think, again and again, what I'm hearing from not necessarily the youngest side of the audience, because that's not my world. I'm not going to be with Deadmau5, and my world is not Ultra. Yes, we'll occasionally get, I had Jason Derulo come in a year and a half ago, and, I have an acoustic-based songwriter music event, and Jason Derulo started as a songwriter, and he really started writing songs before he became an artist. And so we presented him as a songwriter, and it was really fun for him, because yes, he does his PX90 in the dressing room, I can't attest to that, and there's nothing like having a conversation with a guy who's doing one-arm push-ups. But at the end of it, he came out and talked about writing, and talked about an aspect of what he does that you probably wouldn't see in another forum. And we haven't figured out yet how to do that. And for us, it's a money issue. But I do think one is a money issue and the other is a creative, you know. Everybody, I think, always, when we caution developing artists, we're saying to them, you know what, guys, the bigger the content field gets, the more important it is for you to make sure that you're putting quality out. And what she was saying earlier, what the whole panel has been saying about, you know, thinking about what you're doing, thinking about who you want to appeal to, being open to the feedback that something isn't working or is working, and then being able to stay focused on that. In a world that's very complicated, I think that that's really more important than anything, whether it's streaming or sampling or any of the stuff that's going on right now.
Yeah, it's probably really special for Jason Derulo he's probably actually more creative in
He
that
had a
space,
blast.
not streaming,
Yeah.
than streaming it. Because some of our artists, if they know they're live streamed, they kind of like stick to the hits, or they stick within
Well,
a certain
we get-
box
yeah, we
versus
get
like them
moments
being
that
able to
you
be
don't get.
creative and try things out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not for everyone, I guess.
Awesome. So often we just run out of time and don't have any time for questions, but just a real quick note, somebody asked about blockchain, and just a quick note, you know, for myself, as far as I know, best efforts on connecting blockchain to music is still in a concept mode, and that's with Benji Rogers and the .bc codec efforts that he is putting forward. So if you're interested in blockchain and music, check out the .bc codec, Benji Rogers. Google that, come up. It'll be pretty fast. We got time for some questions. Just line up in the middle here. There's a young lady that has a microphone, and we got like 10 minutes to ask questions if anybody has any questions for the panelists. Where's the microphone? There you are. Thank you.
Hello there. Appreciate your time today. I was wondering if you can go back to the topic of ticketing platforms real fast, and if you see those as a platform just to complete a transaction, or if you're looking at those as a way to market a live event beyond the core fans of your artists. And whether or not those exist or not, do you think that something like that is important in your lives?
I think that, yeah, definitely just, I think that I was speaking specifically about pre-sales with artists, and I think those, the fact that artists the pre-sales specifically are what artists have access to in terms of creating something interesting, a campaign around an album that ties in the tour or specific merch. And that's specifically transactions that can occur on the artist's website on the fly, which then becomes information and in terms of like customer data that they own and such. So really kind of building, I mean, email marketing is still, I don't think any of us has touched on that, but that's still very important for all of our artists. And I think that's an avenue to kind of gain insight into who your customers are, how far they're driving from to your shows and things like that. Just basically business intelligence that is helpful for your artist business. And I think that's what those ticketing platforms allow you to do with those pre-sales.
Any other questions? We have a microphone.
What are your primary analytics platforms, like aside from like Next Big Sound? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
It's a
I
good
think.
question 'cause it's relative to the
Yeah, I
platform,
mean,
right?
so, I mean, Google Analytics is at the base of all of our artist websites, but I think for a recent campaign that we did, so it varies. So for ticketing, for example, we ran a pre-sale campaign with a company named Applause for one of our Swedish bands named Amon Amarth, and that, like, it just varies for whatever platform. Like, I mean, whether it's Twitter, like, I mean, the broad ones would be like Adobe Catalyst, but you need a lot of money to actually have access to that, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So in terms of, I mean, there's like Social Bro for Twitter, and like there's just a variety of companies that you can find that you get access to for a monthly fee. So-
Almost every service has an analytic grid to it. So if you're looking at radio, like as a promotion person working a campaign, every day I'm looking at airplay charts, I'm looking at impressions, I'm looking at Shazam, I'm looking at Google Analytics, Facebook for different artists. It really depends on what you want to know, I think, which is what he's speaking to. And many times when you get into a medium, they have that arm that you can find out about, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or what have you. Every website service offers an analytic tool.
Yeah, it also depends on the question you want answered regarding your artist. So I would say, look, any analytics platform that comes to you and wants to charge you a service, they're pretty much regurgitating it and making it palatable. But even if they make it palatable, is that going to answer the question that you want? Is it ticket sales? Is that like for routing the next tour? What should I do? Or what kind of experience I should build for the next tour, et cetera? It depends on the question you want answered. But I think going into the native analytics platforms for each of them are super beneficial.
I will say that in the last 6 months, because I've gone into a couple of our technological partners and looked at analytics and how they're going to affect music and retail purchasing at large, because we deal with a lot of different companies, I have never seen the precise, crazy, terrifying things that are going to be happening with analytics in terms of beacons and how people can track the way that you consume and why you consume and how you consume. And I think that within 6 months to a year, the analytics that are going to be available are going to be so much deeper and more startling than anything we've ever seen in terms of pinpointing audiences. Now, whether companies can afford to buy that information or not is a whole nother story, but I think that information is going to be there in crazy ways.
There's a couple platforms out there if you're a new artist. It's called Hive. There's a few other ones out there. It's again like gathering your data. Now the analytics platforms that are available, they want you.
We have to have something to analyze.
Yeah, you want to be able to segment your data. So you don't want to be offering the guy that's a millionaire a keychain. You want to be able to offer him the $10,000 experience. It's going to be. I think it's going to be a really wild year for analytics, especially since everything's going to be driven on it.
I think we have time for one more short question. Who's got it?
As far as attaching intrinsic value to the artist, Taylor Swift obviously kind of campaigns on anti-bullying and whatnot. I'm more about defining the character and talking up and being more socially responsible rather than talking down to all the haters. What do you see as far as attaching intrinsic value to the brand name?
Of your band.
Not my band, but of others.
I'm going to speak to that for a second. I work with a young girl. I started working with her about a year ago, and her name is Alex G. And she has millions and millions and millions of streams, and she operates her own record company. She has not signed a record deal. She sells her own product, produces her own videos. She's enormously bright, and I think she's 23 or 24 years old. And she really built her own platform on YouTube. And she was very positive, very much about not so much anti-bullying, but I think just self-esteem and in younger people and empowering younger people to feel good about their differences. And it's been massively important in the way her music gets presented. And I think that's back to the authenticity thing that was being said before. I think younger people now, I have a 17-year-old son, so my son's a musician, he's a semi-pro gamer. I'm in his world all the time, watching Twitch, watching all this different stuff. And it's fascinating to me because his generation now is asking questions that I didn't see the generation after him asking in terms of authenticity and positivity and things like that. And personally, I think it's really powerful. And I think it can't be separated in now from what artists are doing and saying, or shouldn't be. Totally. yeah, he's getting drafted to a team right now. So I mean, that's a whole nother amazing world, is to look at professional gaming and where that's going to go and how it's going to affect music in the next 5 to 10 years, which I never thought I would ever speak that language, but I've had to kind of come into that world and understand it, and it's amazing and exciting and engaging, and it's a whole nother massive territory for music and for promotion, and I think to tie music to a lot of different things, and it's not just the games that you would think are obvious, you know, there's just so many different worlds evolving. So I think that's one of the most exciting things that's going on for music,
Awesome.
actually.
Awesome way to wrap it up on a positive
Yeah,
note.
totally. Thank you.
And that's it, the 7 hottest topics of Web Music Tech 2016. Harold Gutierrez, Tiffany Yu, Claire Parr. My name is Todd Tate. Thank you so much.